if they thought of bringing in the innovation in the business, and suddenly if there is a risk in the business, they will be liable to pay all of the debts by themselves. So there is always the situation where the partnership lags the amount of funds which they required for expansion process, for bringing in the innovation, for the technologies they want. This is the reason why the large scale companies can easily build up their scale on a large scale, and they also develop the business. If we talk about the limitations of the partnership, what are the demerits of starting the partnership? So basically, the first one is the unlimited liability. That is, the partners are having the unlimited liability if there are situation of losses. Now the partners would be entirely responsible for all the losses, and they would be paying off the debts. So this is the major disadvantage of the partnership, that the partners over here are having the unlimited liability. They need to pay all the dues which they have in the business. Now, the first one is the unlimited liability, which says that if there is a liability, if they are liable to pay any dues, the partners will be jointly liable, that they need to pay all the debts of the business. If in a partnership, Amit had took the loan, but now if the business idea flopped, now they all will be taking the risk of paying off their dues which the business has incurred. And also, if C has taken the decision that he will be manufacturing the goods, he will be bringing in the innovations, he will be bringing the raw materials, now all the loans, all the dues will be paid off combinedly with the help of the partners of the business, right? So over here we can see there is an unlimited liability which says A, B, and C, they jointly together they need to pay all the debts. They need to pay all the debts of the business. They are liable to pay. They are liable to pay all the debts which are there in the business. Now, the second point is the limited resources. Now, you would be thinking that we were talking in the advantages that the business has, the partnership business has the more amount of fund as compared to the sole proprietorship, because the sole proprietorship, only the individual person, the amount he had, he could start the business with. But if we talk about the partnership, why it is that they are also having the limited resources? Because of the situation, if we talk about the joint stock company where they can invite the shares of the public, they are having the greater amount of resources with themselves. But over here in the partnership, because there were only three partners, that is Amit, Bunty, and Chiku, so they had the limited capital, the capital of 6 lakh rupees, where Bunty was contributing 1 lakh, Chiku was contributing 2 lakh, and Amit was contributing 3 lakhs. So they only had the sufficient resources, they only had the resources which the partners could come up with. But if we talk about the joint stock company, over there, the members are having the large amount of resources for the business, since they are also inviting the shares from the public. Even the public is investing in the joint stock company, so they are holding the large amount of reserves, the large amount of capital with the business. So this is also the limitation over here. If we talk about the third point, possibility of conflicts, which says because A was looking after the sales, B was looking after the promotion, and C was looking after the manufacturing. C was looking after the manufacturing. How will the goods be manufactured? So there was a problem that there can be the conflicts. How there can be conflicts? If C is thinking to bring in the innovation, but earlier when C bought the innovation, that is when Chiku bought the innovation, they incurred losses, and A and B had thought that they won't agree to the decisions of Chiku because they had earlier faced the losses in the business. So over here there can be conflicts where C is insisting that the innovation will bring in the profits for the business, but Amit and Bunty are not agreeing because they know that their capital is also involved and their liability is also unlimited. If there will be a situation of loss, they C alone won't be suffering all the losses, but A and B are jointly together in suffering the losses. So there can be the conflicts. And also, if you think about Bunty, Bunty was thinking for promotional activities on the Instagram. But if the promotional activity did not bring the sufficient result for the business, they will be lacking profits in the business, and they won't be doing the same activity again and again. So this can lead to the conflicts among the business. You would have also seen when you are deciding something for yourself, that is how you will organize the party with your friends. So basically there can be conflicts where your friends are not agreeing to the venue you are deciding. For example, you are thinking that let's go to the restaurant, and the restaurant is very famous in a particular place, and I will be giving the treat over there, and where we will be eating the food. But because the other friends are not agreeing, so there can be conflicts. Same is the situation in the partnership, where the partners are together working in a partnership. There can be the conflict. There can be conflicts in the decision making, where the decisions are not followed on by the other partners, even though they are the principal and the agent. But still, because they are not agreeing, where they won't be agreeing to the idea, and they would be having the conflicts in the business. So there is a situation, there can be the possibility of conflicts also. The lack of continuity, which says if there is a sudden death of the partner, so the partnership can be terminated. Why it can be terminated? Because the partnership deed, the partnership agreement was among the three partners. But if any of the partner is facing any problem, a problem that is if he is mentally disturbed or if he goes bankrupt, so basically the partnership will be halted. The partnership would be terminated. So this is the situation where they lack the continuity. If we talk about the joint Hindu family business, if Karta was no more, the elder son or the elder member of the family became the Karta. But if we talk about the partnership, say if there is a sudden death of the partner, the partnership would be stopped over there, right? So this business also lacks the continuity. If we talk about the next point, lack of public confidence. The public also do not have the confidence in the partnership. Now, what is the reason behind the lack of confidence in the partnership? Because the partners are maintaining secrecy in the business. If the public is not aware of your accounts, if you are opening the partnership, and if public is not aware about the accounts of the partnership, about the assets, about the liabilities, about the profit and losses which they are making, so how can the public even have confidence in the business? That is, the public do not have the confidence in the business because they are maintaining all the secrecy in the business between the partners. So public is not interested in investing in their business, and they lack the public confidence. Over here we can take the situation where C, that is Chiku Ideas, bought losses for the business. Right now, these losses were known only to Amit, Bunty, and Chiku that they are suffering losses. Now, if suddenly Chiku says that I will recover the losses and I will ask the public that they will invest in our business. If Chiku is going to the public and if he is asking for the funds for the business, now the public will ask, the persons will ask that what are the amount of profits and losses which you are generating? You are maintaining the secrets in the business, so how can I invest in your business? So this is a situation where business lacks the public confidence. That is, they are not able to generate the enough amount from the public, or the business is not trusted by the public because the business is run alone by the partners itself, right? Now let's talk in detail about each and every limitations of the partnership. The first one is the unlimited liability. Unlimited liability says that the partners over here, Amit, Bunty, Chiku, will be liable to pay all the debts of the business. If there are losses in the business, they will be paying. If there are debts for the business, that is, they have took the loan from the creditors, now they will be liable jointly to pay all the loans that they had taken for the business. Now, either they have taken the loan for promotional activities, that they required a huge amount of fund for the promotional activities in the World Cup between India and Pakistan. Now, because there was a huge amount of resources required, so they took the loan. They were not able to pay off from the business amount, the profits which they have generated. So they would be also liable to sell off their personal property to clear the dues which they have in the business, right? So they are liable to pay all the debts. Personal resources can also be claimed. Personal resources, for example, A, B, C. We talked about that A was the richest person among the friends A, B, and C. So his personal resources will be used. That is, he need to sell his personal car or his house also if the business is not able to pay off the debts which the business is having. Next, business assets to meet its debt. First of all, if there are debts in the business will try that they will sell off their assets which the business is having. The amount of capital which the business is having, the business will try to pay off the dues with their capital, or they will try that they will be selling their factory, or they will be selling their all assets which the business has to clear off the debts. But if the business is not able to pay off all the dues, so the personal resources can also be claimed so as to pay the dues. Next, liability of partners is bothly joint. That is, A, B, and C, Amit, Bunty, Chiku. These three friends are jointly liable to pay off the debts. That is, they would be paying off the debts together. It is not the situation where A will be paying the debt all alone, or B is entirely responsible for paying off the debts, or C is responsible for paying off all the debts. They jointly will be paying all the debts which they had in the business. And also the partners who have the personal wealth. In our example, Amit was rich, he had the sufficient resources, so he will be liable in that situation to pay off the debts to the creditors if the business is not having the sufficient resources. Later on, there can be the situation where A will recover the amount from B and C, the amount of losses which they need to also take care of. But in the starting, the business requires that the partner should pay off the debts, and then they can recover it from the other partners as well. Okay, so Unlimited liability is that in the sole proprietorship also they had the unlimited liability. The individual person had the all the liabilities upon him. Over here also the partners are having the unlimited liability, where they are forced to sell off their personal assets if the business is not able to pay off all the dues from the assets which the business has. Next point is the limited resources. Again, when we compared the sole proprietorship from the partnership was most favorable in comparison to the sole proprietorship. Why? Because the partnership was having more amount of resources. But suddenly now, here we are saying that the partnership is not having the sufficient resources, they are having the limited resources. Because if we compare the business with the joint stock companies, if we compare the business with the Adani enterprises, if we compare the business with all the enterprises which are taking the amount from the public in the form of shares, in the form of the shares the public is investing in the business, now the partnership is having the limited resources. They can only expand with the amount which the partners have contributed in the business. So the amount which they had in the business was 6 lakh rupees. Now they can only come up with the ideas or the innovation from the 6 lakh rupees, that what can they expand for, or what is the innovational idea they can bring for, but they are limited in their resources. They cannot expand beyond the 6 lakh rupees because it is fixed with them. Until unless they are bringing in the new capital for the business, but still they will be having the insufficient amount which they require for expansion of the business. So over here we can see there is a restriction on the number of partners. First of all, the partners over here are limited to 50. That is the maximum partner which is allowed in the partnership is 50. Even if all the partners are bringing 1 lakh rupees. Now, what is the amount which all the partners can contribute? If there are 5 partners, they will be contributing 5 lakh rupees, 1 lakh each. But if we talk about the joint stock company, the joint stock company has the fund of more than 100 crores also, 1000 crores also. Why? Because they can enjoy the facility where they can invite the public to apply for their shares in the company, and they can get the amount which they require for their business. So over here we can see that because the partners are restricted, which is just 50, so here the partner is restricted to gain the limited amount of capital for the business. And there can also be the situation where all the partners are not bringing in the 1 lakh rupees. Either some of the partners bringing just 50,000 rupees, or some partners are bringing just 10,000 rupees for the business. So the business would lack the amount which they require for continuing their business activities. The first restriction. Second, the capital investment is not sufficient for the large scale. Now the business was operating on a small scale. The business was operating on a small scale where they were running the factory of manufacturing the pens. But now, if the business want to expand, if the business is thinking that they would start with the large firm, they would start with the large manufacturing firm for the business, this is not possible. So this is the major limitation of the business, where the business can operate only on the small size, or they can go up to the middle size, but they cannot compete with the businesses which are on the large scale, which have the sufficient amount of resources to bring in the sufficient technologies and innovations for their business. Next, the business operations are also limited. Why business operations are limited? Because the business is only operating till the activity which the partners can handle. That is, the different partners are having the different managerial skills, and they can contribute to the partnership according to their skills which they are having in the business and the expertise which they have in the business. But if we talk about the joint stock company, where the business is having the sufficient amount of resources, they can also hire the professionals who are professionals in their business. But over here, the partners are looking on all the activities by themselves, so there is a lack of business operation where they can expand to a certain limit. Next, there is a problem in expansion. Expansion, what is the meaning of expansion? When you are expanding, that is, you are bringing in the expansion in the factory, you are either looking for the large scale industry where you are expanding your products, and also you are diversifying your activities. If you are selling pens, now you will be also looking after the different stationery materials. For example, you can go after the eraser, you can also look for the scales, you can also make the compost box for the students. But over here, because the business having the limited amount of resources, so the business cannot think of expansion process, because they have just the resources which is required for the business. They cannot go for beyond. And also the risk they will be taking in, they need to share among themselves only. That is the amount of capital they are having. If they thought of bringing in the innovation in the business, and suddenly if there is a risk in the business, they will be liable to pay all of the debts by themselves. So there is always the situation where the partnership lags the amount of funds which they required for expansion process, for bringing in the innovation, for the technologies they want. This is the reason why the large scale companies can easily build up their scale on a large scale, and they also develop the business. But if you talk about the partnership, because of the limited resource they have with themselves, they are only limited up to the capital which they have in the business. So they cannot expand beyond their limits, beyond the amount which they have for the business. Next, is the possibility of conflicts. Possibility of conflicts is because this business is run by the partners are of different opinions. Different opinions. For example, Amit, Bunty, and Chiku. Now Chiku is thinking to bring in the innovation in terms of pencils. The business has sufficiently expanded itself in the terms of pens. Now they are thinking to start with the pencils. Now, if A and B, that is Amit and Bunty, do not agree with the options of the Chiku, with the innovative ideas of the Chiku, there can be conflicts. Because the Chiku is taking the time where he is bringing with the innovative ideas, he is coming up with the ideas which can generate profits for the business. If it was a sole proprietorship, he do not have to ask from other partners should they look after the expansion or should they look after diversifying their products. But because over here he is in a partnership, he need to ask from other partners about the decision which he is thinking to take for the partnership. So there can be the conflicts where all the partners are not mutually agreeing that should they come up with the idea or should they continue with the activities which they had been performing earlier. Also decision making authority is shared. Now the decisions are binded upon all need to look after the decisions of the company. That is, the Amit, Bunty, and Chiku all are taking the decision jointly. It is not a situation where only Amit will be giving the decisions to Bunty and Chiku, but Bunty will also be taking the decision. He would be taking the decisions of the promotion in which he was expert, and Amit will be looking after the decision of the sales, how they can bring the sales for the company. But there is a situation where all are working. Though there is a reduction of the stress which the partners are having because they are jointly taking all the decision, but there is also the problem where there can be conflicts and they are not agreeing to the decisions taken on by the other partners. Next, there can be difference in opinion that may lead to disputes. Continuously, if Chiku is coming with the innovative ideas for expanding the business, for diversifying the business, but if Amit and Bunty are not agreeing to any of the innovation which he is suggesting, so basically he will also lack the enthusiasm, the motivation he had in the business for bringing in the innovation. So there can be the situation where there can be conflicts and they are not agreeing to the ideas which other partners are bringing. Now, decision of what one partner binding on other partners, which means we have talked about the principal and agent. That is, the principal over here takes the decision and the agents are binded to act upon the decision which the principal is taking. Now, if Amit is taking any of the decision as per the sales, as per the expertise he had in the business, so basically B and C will be binded that they need to agree upon the ideas which Amit is bringing on. So if you talk about the sole proprietorship was alone taking all the decision, but over here the decisions are binding. That is, they need to agree upon the decision that they are taking in the joint process. Now, there can be the unwise decisions also. If B is coming up with the idea that they will be bringing in the innovation in the sales activities through promotion activities in other countries. That is, he was thinking that the customer base he will be developing is in the USA, in the UK. He won't be just looking in the India. He won't be just looking in the sales in the India itself. He will be also looking for the USA market and for the UK market to expand the product. But if his decision is unwise, if he has not made the proper calculation, if he has not made the proper strategy for the business, there can be losses also. That is, the business would be suffering losses which would be taken on by all the partners jointly. So if any of the partners thinks of the idea, for example, Bunty, when he was thinking of the idea and the business made the loss of 1 lakh rupees, the 1 lakh rupees which he spent on advertising the product in USA market, and the USA market was not seeing the worth in the product which this company was making. So there can be the situation where the unwise decision of the partners is leading to the losses for the business. Now, Amit and Chiku would be thinking that if they would have taken the decision, they would have not allowed Bunty to go for the promotional activities in USA and spend the amount for the promotional activities. But because they were in the partnership, they had to agree that they should agree with the partners which they have taken the decisions for. Next, partners leave the firm. If there are continuous losses for the business and the partners are not feeling good together, that they are thinking that the decisions of other partners are not good, that they are able to generate the sufficient profit, so they can also leave the firm. They can also end the partnership. And when the partnership will end, this complete business will be coming to the end, because we have seen over here there is a lack of continuity, which says if there is a conflict among partners and if any of the partner wants to leave, there would be complete closure of the business where they won't be continuing with their business activities. So the partners may even leave the firm. The termination of the partnership will be there, where they will be terminating the partnership, the agreement which they have came up with. And if the partners the remaining partners agree to make the new partnership, they should make the new agreement so as to continue with the partnership. For example, if Bunty thought that he would be leaving the partnership, he would be no more the partner of the partnership. So Amit and Chiku, now Amit and Chiku can decide, should they continue with the partnership, should they make the new agreement and they start with the new partnership, or they should also completely ignore the business and end the business. But if the partners are thinking that they can continue with the business and they can lead to the profits for the business, they can earn good amount of profits for the business, they need to come up with the new agreement. Then the new agreement would be helping them to make the partnership. But if the partners think, for example, if Bunty over here says that I won't be working with you, but I will be transferring the ownership of mine to my son. Now, this is not possible. Why this is not possible? Because the partnership deed was made among the three friends, Amit, Bunty, and Chiku. Now, if you try that you are transferring the ownership to other person, this is not possible because it is just possible in the case of the joint stock company where you can sell the shares of the company and you can transfer the ownership. But over here, because you are the member, you are the partner in the partnership, you need to be there so as to continue with the partnership. But if you are thinking that you will be easily transferring the ownership, but if other partners are not agreeing on this point, so there would be end of the partnership deed. For example, Bunty told that he will be bringing his son and his son will be looking after the activities. But over here, if Amit and Chiku are not agreeing to the Bunty's point, so the partnership would be ended there itself. But if they agree that yes, there can be the owner, there can be the transfer in the ownership, so they will be coming up with the new partnership deed and they can continue with the business. But if they are not agreeing and if there are conflicts in the business will be ended over there. Next point is the lack of continuity. Lack of continuity says the business ends with the death. If there is a death of the partner, for example, among the three friends, among the three partners, if any of the partner died, so there would be the end in the partnership. Why? Because the partnership deed or the agreement which was made was among the three partners. But if there is any partner who is not there in the partnership now, so the partnership would come to the end. So if there is a situation where their partner is no more, or there is a retirement of the partner, or the insolvency, lunacy, then the partnership would be ended. Then if the partners are thinking that now they want to retire from the business and now they won't be leading on the business activities, so the partnership would be coming to the end. Or if there is the insolvency, that is, if the either of the partner in the partnership comes to the bankruptcy, that he is not having the sufficient resources and his personal assets are also sold off and he cannot continue with the business, so the partnership deed will be also terminated thereon, right? In an example, Amit, Bunty, and Chiku, they were in the partnership, and if Bunty is insolvent, now the business would be terminated. The partnership would be terminated because the partnership was made between the three partners. But if there is any absenteeism, if there is any partner who is absent from the partnership, that is, he is no more there or he is insolvent, the business needs to be stopped down. Why? Because there was the agreement among the partners and not only just two partners. So this is the condition for the end of the partnership. There need to be the fresh agreement, and also if they want to run the business, there need to be the fresh agreement, the agreement which will specify the amount of capital that we're bringing, and they need to start from the scratch. They need to start from the starting itself. That is, what is the amount of capital they will be bringing. For example, over here, if Bunty is insolvent, now Amit and Chiku, they will be again making the partnership agreement. In the agreement, again they will be specifying what is the amount Amit is bringing. For example, now Amit is bringing 5 lakh rupees and Chiku is bringing 10 lakh rupees for the business. So now they need to mention what is the amount of capital they have bought in the business, and now there are only two partners in the business, so what will be the ratio in which the profit and loss will be divided, and also what are the responsibilities they will be taking on. If they wish to bring in the additional partners in place of Bunty, then they need to make the partnership and they need to specify who is the new partner. Now he is bringing the new partner, Devapi. He is bringing in the new partner, Devapi, in the business. Now this Devapi as a partner needs to get registered, and the agreement should specify what is the amount of capital he will be bringing, what is the amount of profit and losses he will be sharing, what are the responsibilities of the new partner they are introducing in the business. So this will be the situation for bringing in the fresh agreement and starting with the new business. Next point, lack of public confidence. We have seen in the advantage that there is a secrecy maintained in the partnership. But there is also the disadvantage, that is the public do not have the confidence in the partnership. Why they do not have the confidence in the partnership? Because they are not publishing their results, they are not publishing their accounts, the accounts of profit and losses, that is how much is the profit they are making, how much is the profit they are making, and how much is the loss they are making for the company. So the public do not have the confidence in investing in their business. For example, if a random company comes to you and they ask you that would you be interested in investing in my business, so you would be asking that what is the amount of profit the business is generating, then only you will be interested in investing in their business. If the company is in losses, why you would be even thinking of starting the business with them? So the public over here also lacks the confidence, that is they do not trust the partnership, because they had always maintained the secrecy in terms of the profit and losses which the business has. And also, if you are thinking that you will continue with their business, the partnership which A, B, and C were having, so you are not aware of the liabilities which the business is having. If the business is having the lot amount of creditors with themselves, now because if you are investing in the business, now you are coming up with a new partnership and you are the partner of the business, now you would be liable to pay off all the debts. Why? Because if A, B, and C, let's take a situation, if A, B, and C are not having the sufficient resources to pay off their losses, to pay off their liabilities, now all the partners had the unlimited liability, and A, B, C were not able to pay off the debts even after selling their personal assets. Now the new partner, whoever is there in the partnership, would be liable to pay off all the debts. So there is a situation where you need to see about the losses and the profits as well as the assets and liabilities of the business before investing in the business. So there is the lack of public confidence because they are not aware of the balance sheets of the partnership. Next, because they are not legally required to publish their financial reports. In the joint stock company, they are legally required to publish their accounts, but over here they are not legally required to publish their accounts, so public is also lacking the confidence in the business. Next, it is difficult for public to ascertain the financial status. As an example, we do not know the amount of profits which the business A, B, C has generated together and what is the liability which the business has. So there can be the situation where new person is not interested in investing in their business. The confidence of public is generally low. Now, if the business tries to even get the small amount of funds from the partners, the partner would be liable to pay off all the debts because the partners over here are having the unlimited liability. Because of the unlimited liability status, the partners would be not interested, the new partners would not be interested to start with them the new activities which they are thinking or the innovation which they are thinking to bring, because they are not aware of the financial status of the company. So this being the last limitation of the partnership, which says that is the public do not have the sufficient confidence in the business. Now, let's talk about all the limitations we have discussed till now. The first one was the unlimited liability. The unlimited liability said that the partners need to pay all of the debts which the business has. They are liable to pay all of the debts from the business assets. But if the business assets are not sufficient, then the partners are liable to pay off all the liabilities from their personal assets. That is, their personal assets could also be sold down if the business is not sufficient to pay off the debts. Now, second point was limited resources. As compared to the joint stock company, the business is having the limited resources because the joint stock company have the sufficient amount of resources for bringing in the innovation. But over here, if we see the situation of the partnership is not having the sufficient resources. Why? Because they are just having the resources which the partners bring into the business. And also the number of partners are restricted over here. They can only take up to 50 partners in the partnership. So the amount of capital which the partners can contribute is restricted, and they cannot go for the expansion until unless the partners are having the large amount of funds which they can invest in the business. Next, there can be the possibility of conflicts. The possibility of conflicts is because there are so many partners working in together, so there can be conflicts. Why there can be conflicts? Because either there can be the situation where Amit is saying something that Bunty and Chiku are not agreeing to. And also, if Chiku is bringing in the innovation, Amit and Bunty are not agreeing. There are conflicts among the business partners. Next is the lack of continuity. Lack of continuity says this business can be stopped when the partners are not interested in continuing their business, or if the partner meets with the accident, and if there is a death of the partner or the partner is insolvent, the partnership would be stopped. Why? Because the partnership agreement says that is the partners who have agreed to come up in the partnership should be there. But if there is any partner which is not there in the business because of the death or the insolvency, the partnership would be terminated. Now, for continuing the partnership, they need to make the fresh agreement where the remaining partners will be forming the new partnership and they will be continuing on with their business activities. Next, we studied about the lack of public confidence. The public do not hold the sufficient confidence in the business because it was an advantage of the partnership that they can maintain the secrecy. Now, the secrecy also had the major points, which is The competitors are not aware of the financial status of the company, about the profit and losses of the company. But there is a major disadvantage over here. If the business is not disclosing financial status of the business, now the public is also not interested, or they are not having the confidence in the business so as to invest in a business. So these were the limitations of the partnership.